Hey everyone, my name is Mulder and welcome to GameChron, your #1 stop for tips and tricks on your favorite video games. Today, you guessed it, is Star Wars Squadrons Gameplay Tips and Tricks Part 5. In this video, we'll discuss fleet battles and what my team is currently running right now in order to gain victory in these fights. And then later, I'll talk about combat scenarios, maneuvers, and different tips for new players should definitely know about right when they jump into the game. To not only help them get victories for their team, but to get a high kill count and low death ratio as well. Every little bit helps, but definitely like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this video. I have a few more videos planned for Star Wars Squadrons, but for right now, let's dive into our Star Wars Squadrons tips video part 5.
We'll be waiting, no matter the cost. This war is our crucible. We will emerge triumphant and bring this new republic to its knees.
Let's kick things off with fleet battles. Now, fleet battles is a tug-of-war match between the Rebels and Alliance for both sides to destroy the other side's capital ship, along with the small support ships in order to move the battlefield closer to the enemy's side, while also having to deal with enemy AI fighters along with player fighters as well. Now, there are tons of different ways that both you and your team can tackle fleet battles, but this is the current arrangement that my friends and I have been running so far to get some quick victories. Now, out of the 5-player team that you have, designate one fighter to go after all enemy AI Starfighters when they can. This works well if that person's running an interceptor. The reason why it's good to have one person dedicated to shooting down AI fighters is that it allows your team to keep the morale on your side. Having high boosted morale while also destroying the enemy ships will constantly keep moving the battle in your favor. And because AI ships in this game so far are extremely easy to shoot down, it's good to have one person dedicated to shooting them out. Make sure that whoever you designate to this position to taking down the AI fighters, that they have a high moving Starfighter. This allows them to travel the battlefield a lot faster, assisting in shooting down enemy AI fighters while also giving support to their allies, say on a bombing run. Next up, have 2 players on your team run as bombers. Now, these bombers should be running all high explosives that do damage to capital ships, while also having some defenses against player starfighters. For example, for my bomber, I use the guided rotary cannon that just shreds both AI and player starfighters in my line of sights, while also running ion missiles that help disable enemy shields, along with heavy bombs that moment the enemy ships are down with their shields, I can bomb them to oblivion doing heavy damage. Having 2 players running as bombers during these scenarios will help push your team forward across the battlefield and get to the enemy's capital ship a lot faster, provided that they are well protected, which then comes in the role of the last 2 players running as fighters. Now, the final 2 players on your team should be running either high-powered fighters such as the TIE Fighter or X-Wing, or running as interceptors such as the A-Wing or the TIE Interceptor. These pilots should be running highly maneuverable ships along with the fact of doing high damage. The builds for these different starfighters that I've addressed in my past videos work excellent in fleet battles. These 2 fighter pilots have 2 simple jobs. Their main focus should be solely on taking out enemy players no matter what's going on in the battlefield, while also giving support cover to the bombers when they go on a bombing run. Doing this type of formation and communication can throw your enemy out of sync pretty quickly, especially if it's a team mostly of randos. Make sure that you are using call signs whenever you're attacking an enemy ship. Calling out which ship you and your fellow bomber are about to do your bombing run on while also calling in the fighters for support will help get the battle in your way a lot faster. Another thing to keep in mind is that you will get a Corvette class ship to come in and support you whenever you're on the offensive. Whatever support ship that Corvette ship goes after, make sure your bombers go in with it. The reason why is because that support ship will focus all of its heavy fire on the Corvette ship for as long as it stays alive. This makes life a lot easier for your bombers and fellow starfighter pilots to get in and do heavy damage without getting worried about shot down by the enemy AI starship. Seriously, your Corvette is your best friend in these types of fights when you're taking out the 2 support ships, so do your best to try to keep it alive as best you can. If your team is having a bit of a struggling time taking out the enemy fighters, or for example doing damage to the capital ships, have the one who's taking out the enemy AI fighters switch over and be a support class ship. The support class ship can then heal the bombers as they go on bombing runs while also providing heavy fire. Having 2 bombers that their primary job is attacking the capital ships, while also having 2 fighters giving them cover and a lone fighter for any type of difficult scenario is great for completing these fleet battles. Everyone has their own team structures and their own way of how to plan these things out, so definitely drop a comment below on what your team is currently using to get victories in these fleet battles.
Nice work out there. That's another victory for the New Republic.
Now let's talk about combat situations, maneuvers, and overall help for new players if you find yourself stuck and have a high death and low kill count. Now, one of the biggest things I've noticed both in dogfights and fleet battles since playing this game when it launched is that new players have a bad tendency to stop their ships in the middle of the air and take aim at the starfighter that they're attacking. I understand why you're doing this. You're doing this because you need a better angle of your shot while your target's quickly moving. Do not do this. You are easily a sitting duck out there, regardless of how powerful your shield is or even how high your armor hull is. If you are struggling struggling in getting an angled shot when your ship is moving too fast, here's 2 ways that you can fix this. Look at this game as you would a first-person shooter. Everyone has their own level of sensitivity of how they look around and take aim at their target. For those of you out there that have a high sensitivity set for your first-person shooters and like to look around in rapid succession, having a ship with high maneuverability and speed while also keeping a lock on your target will work out great for you. For those of you out there that have a slower sensitivity in first-person shooters, say if you're trying to snipe or lead your target or prefer just the slower motion of your character, then definitely focus on your ship having high hull, high firepower, and medium maneuverability. This will slow your ship down, but it will also turn your ship a lot slower, which will allow you to take a better aim at your shot without having to stop your ship dead in its tracks. For those of you out there that like to have high speed, high maneuverability, make sure that you have the right engines that describe that you can keep a lock on your target whenever you need it. For those of you out there that like slower moving ships so you can steady your aim a little bit, get an engine that is attached to your ship that describes that you can bug out of a dangerous situation if an enemy's right on your tail. Another good thing to also have for your ship, if you're new to this game and you're struggling to get kills, have the seeker mine attached. The seeker mine is a great way to get between 4 to 6 kills a match out of nowhere, especially if you're constantly being tailed by enemy fighters. The seeker mine, unless you're going at maximum speed, it will lock onto an enemy target and do damage to them as they fly by. Great places to deploy the seeker mine is on health stations that are floating in the air, choke points in the map, say in asteroid fields where you know enemies are going to be flying in, dropping them in the middle of a dogfight, or whenever an enemy's right on your tail to where you can make a quick turn behind an asteroid or a station, drop the seeker mine behind you so that way when the enemy turns, it'll be too late and you'll get an easy kill. Now I have noticed some players to where they'll stop their ship in the middle of the air, take aim, and drop a seeker mine on top of them for protection. This doesn't really work at all. In fact, at times I've run into a few players doing this to where all I had to do was blast them from a distance and fly away, and their seeker mine didn't do anything to me. So I hope I made it clear that stopping your aircraft dead in its tracks will get you absolutely nowhere in this game, especially against experienced players. The other important thing to do is always be in formations with your allies. If you're a new player and you're struggling, make sure you are pinning the enemy on the field. You can do this by locking onto your enemy and then pinning them, notifying your allies that you're on a target. If you're on the mic with a lot of people, make sure not only are you pinning the enemy, but also calling out what their username is too. This will allow your team to move in and assist you whenever you're in danger, or if you need help pinning down an enemy as he's flying around you. Now, during certain key scenarios, whenever your team is completely wiped out, or say for example you see 3 enemy fighters fighting 1 guy, be sure to move in with another ally. Waiting for your team to spawn in, calling them out, and asking them for assistance will always get your team the upper hand. Stay with your team, especially if there's a support craft in the air. For example, if there's a support ship like say the TIE Reaper or the U-Wing, make sure you have 1 fighter with him at all times. If you're a new player and you're struggling to build team support or try to get the gist of the game, definitely give the TIE Reaper or the U-Wing a try. Your main primary focus is to stay with your team and give them health as they're fighting. This will teach you different ways on how to stay on an enemy's tail while also providing help for your ally, master maneuverability better, and just overall get a better feel for the game if you're playing support. If you prefer running in a bomber and say you're doing in fleet battles, make sure you have an interceptor on your tail as well to protect you. Because my friends and I are constantly playing Star Wars Squadrons together and we're constantly communicating, we're forming up on each other, we always lock on the same enemy and call out different kills, we're constantly getting between 10 to 15 kills each per match, along with using the builds that I talked about in my past videos. Now I know this seems like a lot, but for new players out there, definitely take your time and get used to talking to your teammates. If no one's willing to talk to you, if everyone's off mic, that's fine. Find someone on your team to stay with them and support them as they're in the middle of a fight. Use the seeker mine for protection whenever an enemy's hot on your tail, or if you want some quick and easy kills, while also checking out my other videos for all the Starfighter builds I'm currently running right now that will get you a lot of kills and low deaths. This game definitely takes some time getting used to, including even just learning how the flying controls work. I definitely recommend for those out there who are using controllers to try the Aviator or Southpaw control scheme. Either one of those will do great and in my opinion work a hell of a lot better than the default settings you get at the start of the game. But again, you can customize the controller any way you want. And that's it for our Star Wars Squadrons gameplay tips and tricks part 5. I hope this video focusing on fleet battles and combat scenarios for new players really helps you out. I'll be dropping 2 more videos on Star Wars Squadrons focusing on the things that I truly enjoyed about this game and a few things that I think they missed in my top 5. So I hope you stick around. I'll also be covering Watch Dogs Legions very soon once that comes out, followed by Cyberpunk 2077, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry 6, and so much more. So if you want to journey into those games with me, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for a lot more. I look forward to diving into those games with you, but until then, I'm Mulder, and I'll see you next time in the GameChron.
I'm here for you,